Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, and on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have founder and CEO Rob Carpenter of Valyant AI. They've built the world's first customer service AI designed for existing retail hardware in order to break down barriers between humans and computers through natural communication. Their mission is to speed up customer ordering, reduce overhead, and increase profitability. How you doing, Rob?
Oh, I'm doing great. I mean, it's obviously a very interesting time in the country right now with the COVID-19. So home office than I had previously, but family, friends, everybody's healthy. So I'm very thankful for that.
It is. Yeah. For all the listeners for this particular episode, if you're listening to this a year from now or 2 years from now, whenever you pick it up, we're right in the middle of the coronavirus and we're all on lockdown just a little bit here, especially in Colorado, right? I mean, didn't I see something in the news where they're going to do a stay-at-home order at 5 o'clock today? Did I see that or no?
So that was the city of Denver. I'm up a little northwest of that, closer to Boulder, in a town called Louisville. So we don't have the stay-at-home order here yet, but it's in Boulder, and it's in Denver, and then I think about a dozen other states around the country have the stay-at-home order in effect right now.
Crazy times during the recording of this podcast, but hey, the perfect time for us to do it, right?
Yeah. I'm at home. You have my undivided attention, unless a 4-year-old comes running in here.
Right. No worries. Yeah, we're all working from home, so kids are around, dogs are around. My dog's around here somewhere. He's liable to go nuts too. Well, I appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. You have a really cool story. Before we get into Valyant and some of the things you've accomplished, why don't you tell us about yourself personally, maybe some family stuff, where you grew up, things like that? Go ahead.
Yeah, so probably one of the more interesting backgrounds you'll hear about. So I was actually born and raised on the west coast of Alaska, right on the Bering Sea.
Wow.
I was not able to see Russia from my back porch. So that gave me no foreign policy experience, despite what you might have heard to the contrary. My hometown is this wonderful little place called Dillingham. It has 2,000 residents year round. It balloons to 10,000 in the summer. It's the number 2 location in the world for wild salmon. So it's a huge fishing-based kind of industry up there. I spent one summer out fishing on the Bering Sea. It was an incredible experience. It taught me that was what I definitely did not want to do with my life, and I should really focus and pay attention in college. Born and raised, spent all 18 years there. We would get out of Alaska and come down to the lower 48, as we refer to it, about once every other year for the majority of my time growing up. And
wow.
So when I finally graduated high school, I was ready for that big city living lifestyle. So I moved to Marquette, Michigan in the Upper Peninsula, a thriving metropolis of 60,000 people with really cool things like a Taco Bell and a movie theater. Got my undergraduate degree in entrepreneurship, had, lawn mowing business in high school. I had an advertising business in college. I spent a year studying abroad. I made it to about 20 different countries overseas. And then, although we're probably right now on the precipice of another recession, I really kind of cut my teeth in 2008 because that was when I graduated college and started my career. So the first 2 years in my career was at the depth of the kind of real estate recession crash of 2008. Right. And I made the brilliant decision to get into commercial real estate in Florida. And for anybody that remembers, that was probably the worst industry to be in the worst or the second worst state in the country to be in it. So it was trial by fire. It was a pretty intense experience, kind of boiler room, smile and dial, you know, make 100 cold calls per day or you're out kind of situation. But it was an incredible learning experience and really taught me a lot about, you know, being tough, although obviously a lot of that came from Alaska as well, not giving up, sticking with it, and kind of honing your craft and getting really, really good at it. And so despite all the economic issues, by the second year, I was one of the top 10 sales associates in the office.
Wow.
Fast forward a little bit, I came out to Colorado in 2010, ended up getting a MBA with a specialization in enterprise technology management. I ran a custom software development company out here that I started in my spare bedroom, grew it to 30 employees, acquired a company in India, acquired a company in London. And then in 2017, I had the idea for what has now become Valyant, actually artificial intelligence helper employees, and I can get into all the details on that. But essentially technology that can work with employees to make them more efficient at their job and make the experience better for the customers. And now we've been on that rocket ship for the last 3 years. So quick summary on my background.
Wow. Okay. Let me ask you a few questions here now. So you do live northwest of Denver now, and married with children?
Married, yeah. I got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. So again,
right.
Coronavirus, I don't want to say locked at home. I have the pleasure to be around small children 24/7, along with my wonderful wife and mother-in-law. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for teachers. I'm very impressed that they do this day in and day out.
I've heard that probably 10 times in the last 72 hours from people trying to do some homeschooling. In fact, I just talked to somebody earlier this morning who said, wow, this homeschooling thing is kind of tough.
Yeah, this is a lot of work.
So let's do this. Before we get into Valyant, can I back up just a tad and ask a couple of questions here about Applet Ventures, the company you started, like you said, when you were in your dorm room?
Yeah, fire away.
So while you were in school, is this while you were getting your master's? Yeah, you were getting your master's at CU. And tell me how that happened. Did you start doing some projects, some software development projects for people on the side, and then it kind of grew into a company? Walk us into how you grew that a little bit.
Yeah, so in college, in undergrad, I probably had the nerdiest side hustle you could ever imagine. I wrote business plans for startup entrepreneurs.
What?
So I would help them. Yeah, right. How do you like that? So
how were you qualified? Like, how did that even happen? Were your parents entrepreneurs? How'd that even happen?
No, neither of my parents were entrepreneurs. My mom is and my dad managed a radio station for about 20 years. No, I just read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and every person that I wanted to be like seemed like they were successful entrepreneurs. So I was like, I want to be like that guy. So 16 on, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so there was just different ways of things that I tried out kind of along the way as I sort of built up my tool set and skill set and everything. But yeah, in undergrad, I just got connected with some entrepreneurs and I built business plans for them and helped them with their finances, kind of figuring out their product market fit, what the total addressable market was.
Okay.
All that kind of stuff. And so I did that in undergrad, and then fast forward about 5 or 6 years when I was working on my master's degree, I started doing some of that work on the side again. And this was in 2011 when the iPad came out. And so I had an idea to create an iPad application that would help people write business plans. Wow. I knew nothing about software other than liking technology. I didn't know how to program and do anything else. So naturally, what do? I get on Freelancer and I hire a developer in India. And, there's just like any country, experiences. Unfortunately, I started with the tough one. And I got oh yeah, I'll have that iPad app done for you in 12 days and it'll be $700. Fast forward about 6 months later, massive amounts of brain damage. I finally had a product that I could sell in the market. So November of 2011, launched my iPad app. It was called Business Plan Premier. It's still out there. It's had hundreds of thousands of downloads.
Really?
And it took off. We peaked at number 32 of all paid business apps in North America. We were the number one paid business app in Ghana and Qatar and a few other countries overseas. And so November of 2011, I was on a student-led venture capital fund for CU Denver. And I was sitting down with one of the other fund members, and the app had just come out, and I was showing it to him, and I was showing him all the sales numbers, and we were getting super excited, and we were like high-fiving each other in Starbucks. And this older guy walked up, and he said, hey, I couldn't help but overhearing, what you were talking about. He was like, I work for Apple. I'm in business development, and I have several app ideas. Can you help me? And because I'm an absolute genius, in my infinite wisdom, I was like, nope, can't help you. And I was like, I built this one app. I don't know what I'm doing. It was a terrible experience. Going well, but everything else sucked. And he was like, all right, sorry to bug you. And he walked away. And it was one of those moments where my light bulb was significantly delayed. And so the light didn't go off until, unfortunately, that gentleman was well out of sight. And I was like, oh my God, maybe we could build business apps or iPad apps for people. And so the guy I was sitting down with, we started getting really excited and talking about it. And so in January of 2012, about 60 days later, he and I partnered up, filed the paperwork. And so very much, started out with us working, from our home offices. And by about May of 2012, the income from Business Plan Premier had eclipsed my full-time job. So I quit my full-time job and focused on launching this custom software development company.
Wow. Okay. To get that first app built, you funded it from your full-time job. I mean, whatever you had to pay the developer in India or whatever, you just bootstrapped it yourself, right?
Totally bootstrapped it. Yeah, I used the money that I made writing business plans for people.
I see. Okay, very good. All right. So then this takes off, and then you eventually, over a course of what looks like six years, you had how many
6 years.
How many employees?
I grew up to 30 employees. So I had about 7 employees in the U.S., and then I had roughly 23 employees in India. And then right around the time that I started the process to exit Appit, I acquired a really small app development company in London. So I ended up doing 2 M&A transactions while I was running that company.
Okay, why'd you sell it, or did somebody acquire it, or what happened?
Well, I came up with the idea for Valyant in January of 2017, and so I actually ran both companies for all of 2017. And as you can imagine, not only is that a lot of work, but then questions arise of where are you putting your time. And pretty quickly, it became apparent that Valyant was a company that, angel investors and VCs would fund. So then that also started to create conflicts of interest. So I had a friend in town that I'd known for 6 or 7 years. Her name is Amanda Moriucci. And, wicked smart, hardworking person, had, driven a massive amount of sales for one of the largest custom software companies in Colorado. And I think she was ready to kind of do her own entrepreneurial venture. So she came on board as CEO, and she ran the company for all of 2018, and then really sort of took over and ran the whole thing. And so about a year ago, we came to terms, and she acquired the company.
Wow. Okay. Was that a big time exit for you? Big enough for you to retire, or not quite?
Not quite big enough to retire. And I don't know if I'd ever want to retire. You always got to be hustling.
Okay, so you brought her in. She acquired the company. So you no longer, are you on the board or anything at this point, or you're done there?
Nope, I'm done. I stepped down from the board a few months ago. I still have a couple points in the company just to keep it fun. But no, it's 100% her endeavor now, and
okay.
She's doing amazing. Within the first year, she had already doubled revenue. So I was like, wow, seriously, I needed to have done this a long time ago, apparently.
All right, and then you put all your efforts on Valyant, right? And so
Yep.
give the listeners kind of a Valyant overview. Which, by the way, if you go to the website, you got a nice video there right up front that really gives a nice
Yeah.
overview. Anyway, just so everybody knows. But just in your own words, as of today, why don't you give us the 3 to 5 minute Valyant overview? Go for it.
Yeah, so with Valyant, what we're looking to do are build artificially intelligent digital employees, essentially. So think of Siri or Google or Alexa, where you can talk to them, where those things are single intent. You can ask it a question like, what's the weather? We're working on building a next generation system that allows a more fluid back and forth conversational interaction to provide support for the enterprise. So we really believe that conversational AI is ready to expand and move out of kind of a novelty in the consumer space to an actual driver of business value in the enterprise. We identified about 20 different industries where we could start, and we knew early on that we wanted to focus. And so we ended up picking the quick serve restaurant industry or fast food. And the first implementation of our product is drive-through AI. So imagine you pull into your favorite fast food restaurant, you pull up in front of the digital menu board. Instead of an employee inside the restaurant greeting you, our AI will greet you. So it'll say, welcome to our restaurant, take your time, look at the menu, order when you're ready. Customer could tell it what they want, say, hey, I want a cheeseburger, or they could ask a question and say, hey, what do you have that's gluten-free? And then we have a proprietary piece of hardware that we've installed that then here's what the customer said, has essentially a rudimentary common sense engine, and then can talk back to the customer and say, okay, well, we have this item, this item, and this item that are gluten-free. Or, okay, I've added your cheeseburger, do you want to make it a combo? And so it has that conversational interaction with the customer. And then when they're done, it inserts the order into the point of sale system or the digital cash register, and then tells the customer their final price and asks them to pull forward. So by automating that task, we make the entire restaurant more efficient. So currently, the vast majority of fast food restaurants will have one employee who has to take orders, potentially from 2 lanes. They are also in charge of taking payment. They're in charge of getting the food ready, handing the food out. It's a massive amount of work to put on one person. And so by automating that task of order taking, the employee can focus all of their energy on processing payment and handing food out the window.
Okay. All right. Very good. And how far along are you now with revenue and customers and things like that? Like how big is, walk us through the size of the company. I don't know if you want to share revenue or not, but maybe how many restaurant chains have you signed on? How many employees do you have? Give us an overview there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we're working with 4 pilot customers right now. We have 2 more that we're in the process of closing. Okay. One of which is one of the larger chains in the country that everybody's familiar with. Oh. So it's definitely a point in the market where I believe it's moving from kind of research and development and curiosity to a product that is ready for the market, ready to be tested. Still needs some areas of improvement, but is really, I think, ready for prime time and ready to start scaling. As far as we know, we were the first company to get this technology into market almost a year and a half ago. October of 2018, a restaurant chain here in Denver called Good Times was the first one anywhere in the world that we're aware of that rolled out kind of this full drive-through conversational AI system. And so now what we're looking to do is start expanding that with that restaurant chain as well as with others.
Are you pre-revenue still, or are you getting paid?
We're kind of in the pilot revenue phase. So we're getting paid for the pilots, but we're not at scale yet. Okay. And that's hopefully what will be happening over the next 2 quarters. Although, economic certainty aside.
Right. Did you have to raise a bunch of cash to get it to this point? Did you bootstrap it yourself or a combo? I don't know what you want to share there.
No, we've raised a bunch of capital. So we've raised 5.5 million to date, predominantly from angels as well as private equity.
Okay, very good. So a lot of experiences for you there, asking people for money, right? That was a little bit different for you.
Yeah. It's kind of like selling real estate in the bottom of a recession. You know, you just get real comfortable with no and moving forward.
Did you get to keep control? Did you lose control at this point? Are you still in charge of the situation or not?
Yep, still in charge.
Okay, all right, very good. And how many employees today?
15.
15 employees. Okay, very good. All right, excellent. And it sounds like you got some companies testing it and pilots and all those kinds of things. Very good. What about competition, right? I mean, so nobody else is doing this, really? I would think there's all kinds of people doing this. Is that not the case?
It's an industry or a technology category, I would say, that's filled with smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of people that are making claims that they have the technology. From what I know, as much as I can know about the market and following what's going on, I think there's only about 5 of us that actually have a real product in market being tested. Conversational AI, actively hard product to build. Mm-hmm. I would say of all of the restaurants and technology companies that we've talked to, everybody has dabbled with this technology. And again, there's only a couple of us that have actually gotten a product to market. So we've essentially been a hardcore research and development company for the last 3 years. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears and late nights working on bringing this product to market. We've already had 3 patents approved by the USPTO. We have 5 more in process. So we truly feel like we are kind of pushing the cutting edge of the industry right now. So to your point, a lot of talk, only a few of us that have really cracked the nut and actually gotten a product that's functional in market. And there's probably even less of us that are in a position to actually be able to start scaling this system.
Speaking of scaling, right? I mean, selling conversational software to restaurants, that's the small piece, right? I mean, I'm assuming you're building this technology to sell to whoever, robot companies, whatever. Conversational AI could be sold in all kinds of things, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a new technology market category, probably over the next 3 to 7 years. Again, it's really hard, but I think it's going to be easily as disruptive as mobile apps were, if not the web, because the ability to sort of fundamentally change is huge. So take another industry like cable companies, right? We've all had to call in about a bill that jumped up for no reason. We're mad. We had to sit there and wait for somebody to, sorry, I'm just closing a window here. Wait for somebody to take our call, right? It's 30 minutes. We're beating our head against the wall. It's a terrible experience. And then that person comes on the line. They probably really don't enjoy their job that much, and they're kind of giving you the runaround. Now imagine you flip that scenario with conversational AI, where you call in, 2 rings in, a friendly human-sounding voice picks up the phone. Because it has the number, it can open up all my account information. It says, hey, Rob, thanks for calling in. What's the problem? And I could say, like, well, my bill went up. And then it can respond back and say, like, well, your 6-month, entry-level trial period has ended. Now it goes to the full package. And I say, well, I don't want to pay that. I'm going to quit. And they say, okay. And then it runs an algorithm and looks at it and says, all right, well, Rob pays his bill on time. Good customer. We want to retain him. So the AI comes back and says, okay, we'll keep the introductory price for another 6 months. Would you be willing to stay? Okay, yeah, I'll stay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Anything else I can do for you? Nope, that's it. All right, thanks, bye. So you've taken this really awful experience. You've now condensed it down into a minute. You've given the customer ideally what they want, and you've provided them a good experience.
Mm. What would you say to, I'm guessing you've been challenged with this before, so I hope you don't mind me throwing it out there. What would you say to the critics that might say, well, gosh, Rob, you're going to, put all these people out of work that work at drive-thrus and blah, blah, blah. I'm just assuming you've gotten hit with that over time. What's
Once
your
or twice.
I'm guessing that because I've interviewed several people that work for robotics companies and things, and you can just tell they're used to answering the question. What's your response to people that say, "Hey, yeah, cool technology, but what about all the people you're going to put out of work?" What's your response?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think it's going to be fundamental to have that discussion moving forward. I think the first and kind of most important point is that job evolution, let's call it, isn't a bad thing necessarily. If you go back not even 100 years, it was something like 95% of the U.S. workers worked in agrarian society, right? Like they were out on the farm, they were picking stuff. And it's not that that's a bad living, but it's a hard living, and now it's probably 1% to less people work, in agriculture. And I don't know about you, but I really like my office with coffee and our ping pong table, right? Like, so automating jobs shouldn't automatically be seen as a bad thing. It ultimately can allow people to make more money, live healthier lives, live better lives, live easier lives. Like there are real positives to automation that I think gets overlooked in this discussion. What's different about this situation, which I think is what everybody is referring to, is, well, yes, but what happens if like all jobs get automated simultaneously? And that obviously is an extremely bad thing. And so I think that's something where we do need to have this dialogue and we do need to watch. Now, 2 years ago, Elon Musk was promising that self-driving cars were going to be out in a few days, right? And automating taxi cab jobs and semi-truck driver jobs was really going to make, all those positions go away through automation. What we're finding out now is that actually it's really, really hard to build self-driving cars. I don't think AI is being kind of what we hoped it would be, in that it's just very brittle. And it's easy to get off the rails and have AI stop working. And when that happens in the self-driving car situation, you end up with catastrophic and potentially deadly errors. There was a CEO of a semi-truck company who recently said that he thinks the technology is still a decade away. And unfortunately, he was in the process of shutting down his self-driving semi-truck business. So I think that AI is probably not going to be quite the scary thing we all thought it was, at least probably not within the next decade or two. Now, after that, who knows? But then again, if you go back to the 1920s and you have people working in an agrarian society, you didn't think that a social media manager was going to be a real job down the road, right? So you don't know what new jobs are going to come about by the economy changing over time. And a dynamic economy is a good thing. So I think the important thing is we need to watch and wait and kind of see what happens, be cognizant of it. At least from my perspective on the front lines, in the short term, AI is going to be an employee helper. It's going to make employees more efficient. Think of Excel, right? Excel didn't get rid of accounting jobs. It just made accountants more efficient. And for at least the next decade or two, I think that's the most likely outcome for AI. It's going to make everybody more efficient.
Gotcha.
After that, who knows?
I appreciate that. One more deeper question on that particular topic, then we can move away from it because I know we could talk about that for several hours. Speaking of making life easier for people, because I generally feel the same when it comes to AI or robotics. I kind of agree. It probably will put us in this society where things are easier, more things are done for us. Do you eventually see a world where we do have this awesome life where we can just kind of chill a little bit more and we don't have to do a lot of these jobs and there's more time to go to the park with your kids or do whatever? Do you see it that eventually? And if it is going that way, does that mean fewer people work and it's more of a, there's very, very few people that actually produce tactical work into the economy? I mean, where do you see, what's your vision of that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I'm sure like a lot of people in the AI space, I spend a lot of time, reading about sort of superhuman AI or AGI, artificial general intelligence. So If I was to look into my crystal ball, I would say yes. Probably in about 100 years, we will have a hard time maintaining full employment. And I think in that situation, something like a universal basic income that can help people out, I think is going to be really important. And I think there's this immediate knee-jerk that jobs going away is terrible. But this idea of working 12 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week is a new invention that really only goes back to the Industrial Revolution. Now, as far as all of us are concerned, that's kind of about the edges of real history. And then beyond that, you just get into textbooks, right? So I think for people, they've gotten very accustomed to that is how the world needs to work. And that's not how it's always been. In the 1700s, 1600s, you know, it was very common that you would work longer hours kind of at the peak of the growing season. But then the rest of the year, you honestly had a lot of downtime.
That's right.
Spend time with your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you had a lot more free time, and we've just kind of forgotten that part of our history. And we've always assumed that we just have to, you know, work until we die, right? So that's not necessarily the case. And I don't think we should all be terrified about the idea of spending more time with our kids and going to the park and things like that.
I couldn't agree more. And you know, the interesting thing about the topic is sometimes when you try to have a deep philosophical conversation like that, like kind of like we're touching on, then people sway it into politics, and you know, they'll start saying things like, "Oh, that's a socialistic society." It's like, that's not really what we're talking. We're not really talking about politics. We're talking about a world where maybe fewer people don't have to work because robots and AI are taking care of things. And to your point, what's bad about that? I don't, you know,
that's not a bad thing. You got to sleep in and work. That's terrible.
You know, yeah. If it creates an easier world, so to speak, just like you said, easier world, and that's what technology's done for human beings. Basically, it's just made life easier. I mean, to be reminded of that, all you got to do is pull up an old movie, you know, of back in the cowboy days or the Roman days or whatever, and you just get a real reminder of, oh yeah, life actually used to be pretty damn hard.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say too, you know, one other thing to put out there, just kind of on the philosophical or thought process standpoint, I read this a while back and it really stuck for me, is that human desire is infinite. So there's not really a point where we say, yep, we got everything we need, we're done, like I'm going to sit at home, right? Like there's always something more. Like, and you know, now we're talking crazy science fiction stuff, but maybe you want to build a city under the ocean, or you want to go colonize Mars, like what you're working about, right? Like human desire is infinite. We always want more. We always want to do something, you know, something new, something else. And so I think even as robots and automation or AI come along, they're going to do some of the tasks that really aren't that hard, like drive-through order taking, right? Like that should be automated. Humans are creative. Humans desire challenges, and giving them mind-numbing, redundant tasks doesn't make their life better.
That's a good point.
So automate dangerous, mind-numbing tasks, free human intellectual capability up to do things creative, problem-solving, strategic that, you know, computers especially historically are atrocious at, and let humans do what they're best at. And I think what we're going to find is there's always going to be other things for us to focus our mental energy on. Global warming, right? Like there's all kinds of big, intractable, large and hard problems that are good use cases for human ingenuity and creativity.
Yep. Good stuff. Thank you for sharing that, Rob. Appreciate it. So let's bring it back now to a couple of entrepreneurial questions before we run out of time. So you've basically been an entrepreneur since, I mean, hell, since you were in high school, pretty much. I mean, you never really, besides selling some commercial real estate, you never really had a regular job, not for a long time, right? You've been an entrepreneur most of your life.
Right.
What kind of advice? What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs that have not taken the leap yet, that have an idea, they want to do something, but they're a little nervous or scared? What would you tell those folks?
I think entrepreneurship, like anything, is a skill that can be learned. I don't think it's innate. But I do think it takes some time to understand how to sell people, whether you're selling them on your service or your product or getting them to come on a podcast, right? Like, we think of sales as like a car salesman, but sales really permeates every level of our life, where we're trying to negotiate on a house, we're trying to get a job promotion. So, starting small in entrepreneurship, I actually think is a good idea. Like, learn how to do some basic selling, learn how to do some basic, customer management, learn how to do some basic kind of profit and loss, startup, business modeling type stuff, all things that you're going to figure out along the way. I think people get hyper-focused on the Ubers and the Airbnbs of the world and think, hey, I need to go and have the billion-dollar idea. And the reality is those are very few and far between. And if you talk to any of the people that have gotten to that level, most of them say, like, yeah, it was hard work, but I mean, luck. They're like, without luck, it never would have happened. Yeah. Google was one of like 60 search engines.
That's right.
And the plan just aligned for them. And it was a ton of hard work and a ton of ingenuity and I think a genuinely great product, but there was luck in there. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs or people that want to start a business, they're fixated on what gets the headlines, which are these billion-dollar behemoth companies. But the reality is, those are 1 in a million or 1 in a billion for one of those to take off. And so start a little more methodically and look at starting, I would say, a service-based business. I mean, Appet Ventures was a great opportunity for me for 6 years because I learned all of those skills that I needed to now put that energy into my moonshine and my company that I'm shooting for $1 billion. But trying to do that out of the gate generally doesn't work. You can even look at some other examples like Angry Birds, the mobile game that was one of the biggest, things at the time. The guy who built Angry Bird, that was like their 60th app. I mean, I think the story goes, the guy was like literally living on a friend's couch because he had no money. And he was just cranking out these apps, trying to find one that would work. And then Angry Birds hit and became a, billion-dollar entity. But it wasn't necessarily the absolutely first idea that did that. So get out there, get some practice in, start a service-based business. When I was starting Appet Ventures, I did have a full-time job in Denver working for an internet marketing company. My wife, she's an entrepreneur. She's a therapist. So she worked for a nonprofit in Denver for several years, and then nights and weekends, she would run her private practice for therapy. And once her private practice had essentially generated her a part-time income, she felt comfortable letting go of her full-time job and putting all of her energy into running her therapy business. And, very quickly, within a few months, got it up to a full-time salary. But I think no experience going after the big win, it's not very likely, at least in the beginning, and then quitting your job and quickly burning through all your savings while you're trying to figure it out is probably a recipe for a bad experience. So go easy on yourself. Take it easy, start small, start with the service-based business, do it nights and weekends, get familiar with the whole process, make sure you like it. And then if you do, then, get that up to a part-time job and then transition from your full-time job to your new business.
Good advice, Rob, for everybody that doesn't come from a trust fund or have a bunch of money given to them right up front. That's probably the best way to do it. How about
people that grew up in village?
Right. By the way, your parents still in Alaska?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they got a beautiful house up there, and I try to get back every other year to visit.
That's so cool. I wanted to ask you a bunch more questions about Alaska, but we were running out of time. Two more questions. Quick advice for first-time young CEOs. What would you tell them? First-time young CEO, first week, boom, all of a sudden they're CEO. They got 15 employees, and they're like, oh, shit, okay, I'm a CEO now.
I mean, if it's your first week and you have 15 employees, you're probably doing something really right. So maybe lean into your gut on that one because something is working out well for you. Most young CEOs will start with themselves and then 1 employee, 2 employees, 3 employees. I'll say for me, I mean, not only was I young when I started my business, 23, 24, I also look young. I mean, I'm 35 now and still look like I'm 24. So I will say that, it's very common for a lot of young CEOs to have imposter syndrome where you don't think you should be there and it's a fluke or you've taken advantage of somebody or something like that. And so first thing I would say is I just want to normalize that. If you're feeling that, that's okay. Almost every young entrepreneur I talk to feels that way at one point or another. So be cognizant of that, and it's okay. Then the next thing I'll say is that, especially if you're hiring employees that are your age or older, you're going to have to walk a fine line where you want to listen to them. They do have a lot of experience and a lot of advice to give.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you hired them. They didn't hire you. And so don't let your imposter syndrome get the best of you where you feel like you have to kowtow to people that are older than you. Something happened where you had the ability to hire them and they were not hiring you, that says you're doing the right thing. And lean into that, use the wisdom of those that are around you, but then set a course and go for it.
Ooh, I like it. Good stuff. Last question here. If you had to put your core purpose in life into a sentence, and I didn't let you tie that to your 2 children or your wife. In other words, I wanted you to go beyond family, because I'm assuming that's
okay.
Pretty heavy core purpose.
Good caveat. Yeah.
If I pushed you beyond family, how would you describe your core purpose?
My core purpose is to, and this will be a little self-serving, my core purpose is to get to space. That's driven me since I was a kid.
Cool.
I've always dreamed of being able to orbit the planet. I was, very, very lucky as a kid. I got to go to space camp and stuff like that. And I think I have a lot of talents, but mathematics is not one of them. So I knew pretty quickly I probably wasn't going to be a PhD, engineer that gets selected to be an astronaut. Right. And so I kind of went the other route of saying like, okay, well, I'm going to build companies and I'll just buy a ticket to space. So honestly, that's it. I'm probably going to, have to wait till the kids are out of school at this point, at least out of high school. But that's really what's driven me. My whole life is just a deep kind of unending desire and love for space and what's out there and exploration. And I can't wait until the day when I get to go orbit the planet.
That touches on what you said earlier, which is our desire as humans to explore and learn more and want to do something different. You mentioned that earlier. By the way,
are there there's always something else.
Are there, speaking of what else is out there, is there life out there in another universe or another planet somewhere? What are your thoughts?
Unequivocally, pure probability says there has to be. There's somewhere on the order of trillions of planets in the universe. And the idea that it only happened once, it's just so unlikely. Even all of the crazy probabilities that had to occur for life to happen here, you just have such a vast number to work with. Absolutely. Now, will we ever see them? That I don't know, because we're not only separated by distance, but we're separated by time. The universe is 13.5 billion years old, right? So an entire galaxy spanning civilization could have already come and gone, or the next one might still be 1 billion years away. So I can't say that we'll ever run into aliens, because even if they exist in this time, the space is just unimaginably large. But at some point, alien life has 100% existed.
By the way, isn't the key finding a faster way to travel? I mean, that's the only way it's going to happen, right? If somebody invents a faster way to travel, I would think. I don't know. I'm not.
Right. Which technically is impossible via the laws of physics.
Yeah. Or at least as we know them, right? It's interesting you bring that up. It's interesting you bring that up. I was watching some old movie with my wife the other weekend. I can't even remember what it was, but there was a scene in there. Christopher Columbus was arguing with somebody. Anyway, the gist of the scene was, we got to find out what's out there. Like, we don't even know. Like, how can we? His whole point, or the point of that conversation in the movie was, oh my God, how can we just sit here and not know what's out there? Like, somebody's got to go see what's out there. Like, we have to find out. We have to find out how far the ocean goes. Like, we can't just assume it. We have to go see. and I'm amazed. I'm always a little bit amazed that we as human beings aren't more aggressive in the approach of space, because we're sitting around here not knowing what's out there. Like we don't know. And doesn't somebody want to find out? I do.
I do, for sure. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I think curiosity is innately human, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why we climbed down from the tree, or that's why we left our first village, and that's why we would get on boats and sail across the ocean. Like curiosity of what's out there is innately human. Yeah. And I don't think it's fair to try to bury that or disregard that. We are all curious. That's why we learn. That's why we study. That's why we ask questions. That's why we look for human connection. Curiosity is so important. And I think, unfortunately, the reality is that space travel is just crazy expensive. So I think that's been a big hindrance of late. But hopefully people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos can bring those costs down. So us average Joes can get up and go have a beer on the moon.
Or how about Rob Carpenter, who invents this technology and makes $1 billion, and he puts money into it. By the way, I want to stay close to you so that we're friends. And then when you can take take 3 friends with you and go to space, I get to go up too.
Right. You call and be like, hey, talk to Elon. I went ahead and bought us a ship. I've got like 4 seats.
Very cool. Rob, thanks so much for being on the Riderflex podcast. Awesome story. I'm going to hit stop on our recording here, but don't hang up yet. I want to talk to you on the side just for a second. Thank you so much, sir. Great story. Really love what you guys are doing at Valyant AI. Good luck with everything. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, Steve.
You bet. The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.